real value of AI will be in revolutionizing the cost base of our businesses today.
Using AI to improve the performance of the applications and keep them in line, and make sure that the network is performing optimally and the application is performing optimally. I think that's where AI really can help.
And one thing that we're hearing from every operator around the world right now is power management, right? So how do we help with AI optimize something like that? That could give you probably a fairly quick view of how applying AI to my RAN will be helpful.
We as HPE, as one of the global supercomputing provider, we also know that it's going to be not one size fits all. There will be different LLMs trained for different kinds of workloads, and we are going to offer that as a service.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm delighted to see you all here, and hello to all the people downstairs watching us. I'm Charlotte Kahn. I'm a journalist, and I'm delighted to be with you to moderate an important conversation about the topic of MWC this year. And let me tell you, it's also the topic of most conferences I attend across many industries currently. It's about AI, of course, and how to unlock the huge potential of AI in telco, from automation to energy efficiency and security to the benefits in terms of fostering even more innovation and enhancing customer experience. So we're together for about 1 hour, but before I introduce you to my wonderful guests today, I'd like to stress that we'd like this discussion to be engaging, inspiring, and interactive. So I'd like you to raise your hand whenever you feel that you'd like to challenge some of our guests, maybe find out more, make a point, share best practices or case studies. In other words, do interact with us. We'll have a Q&A towards the second half of the discussion as well. But just to let you know, your input is very much welcome. So please join me in sending a very warm welcome to our experts today. We have Deepika Adusumilli, who's Chief Data and AI Officer at BT Group. Warm welcome. Thank you very much. Ahmed Hafez, who's Vice President of Technology Strategy at Deutsche Telekom. Deborah Battaglia, who's Senior Vice President of Customer Experience at Assurant. Hello. Francesc, Guim, who's Senior Principal Architect at the CTO Office at Intel Corporation. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. And last but not least, of course, we've got Jeppe Hagbarth Bjerring, who's Business Development Manager for AI Platforms at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Thank you so much for being with us today. Now, let's set the scene for this discussion. Since ChatGPT, you've all heard of it, I hope by now, has burst onto the scene, the world has gone AI crazy, or actually Gen AI crazy, as AI is not something that is new to your industry or to your customers. So I thought I'd start this conversation with a state of play. So I'd like my guests to start with to tell me how you are currently using AI and machine learning across your various, industries and operations, of course, and in network infrastructure. We'll start with you, Deepika.
Lovely, thank you. Absolutely right. When Gen AI, or the whole ChatGPT came around, people realized that machines can talk your language. When machines talk your language, the whole conversation changed. You could take unstructured data, you can take a lot of data, you can put things through, you can have several sentences compiled in to be able to come to the answer. And then when you go through that, there's a lot you could achieve. There's a lot of productivity conversations. There's a lot of assistance conversations. There are lots of piloting conversations, summarization conversations, which are hugely useful for any company to increase how the employees themselves can, better do their work, take the chores out of their life, right? So at BT, we are absolutely focused on what we give to our colleagues. How do we empower them? How do we give productivity gains to them, operational efficiency gains to them? And also, how do we get our things done? How do we make it quite easy? Then we have a lot of sales and service. So what do you provide for your customers? How do you make your sales better? How do you make your services better? How do you offer that to digital channels? How do you get the right information out there and all of that? And we are a huge network company. So we have our mobile network, our fixed network. We supply a lot of network coverage across UK. And we also are quite focused on understanding how do we understand the faults in our network, how do we bring observability into it, how do we bring AI to the conversation of understanding how do we provide better service. So the ambition is huge. What we want to be able to do is huge. We want to be able to get our productivity percentage up by 15 to 20%, huge targets out there. And as sales, we want to be able to bring up productivity again across our sales agents to 20 to 30% industry standards as everyone else is doing. And also then our NPS scores up. So the potential is huge. We want to be able to play in the market when we want to be able to support that.
So there's definitely a lot of ambition there, but currently, how do you use AI in your operations, maybe across your networks?
So at BT, like any other company, I think there's a lot about, so I'll not answer the network questions in detail, because again, we are doing a lot of work across industries. We are doing a lot of work across the company. As I said, we are doing a lot of observability, understanding, false understanding. We have a lot of B2B enterprise customers. So with all of them, we're working quite tightly. But also, as I said, we do a lot of embedded software and embedded integrated services across the company, which means we've done a huge announcement with Code Whisperer for AWS, and that's got viral. A simple post went so viral because we've pulled a lot of Code Whisperer and the productivity increase across the company. We've rolled it out to 1,200 of our developer colleagues, 10,000 lines of code and all of that. So that's happening from a Gen AI perspective. A lot of summarization, chatbot activity happening at the moment. As a network, we said we are working inwards to be able to make it available to our customers.
Thank you very much. Now, Ahmed, what about the state of play at Deutsche Telekom?
Right, good question. So I like also what you said earlier, that Gen AI is new, but predictive AI has been always there, so for the last decade at least. So how we see that, we split the network life cycle into six stages, or I'd say 5 stages plus an additional cross-functional one, which is the plan, design, build, run, then use security, and then the cross-functional, which comes across all of them. We actually have AI across the full life cycle of networks. I mean, predictive AI has been there for a very long time, but I will give you some examples. I mean, when we talk about planning, for instance, for fiber rollout, in Germany, we are doing huge fiber rollout with billions that we're putting there. We have one of the big problems we face is that when you want to build fiber, you need to understand the grounds and how it looks like, what's the properties, characteristics. And every area is different, and you send people to do that. So what we do now is we send a car to do that, visualize it via cameras, get all the information, send the information back, and then not only understanding what's there, but we also can plan for what would be the needs to build and actually do the actual build out for fiber. Then we come to the design. Design is one of the aspects that we didn't find neither predictive or Gen AI strong enough to do. Human beings are still stronger because the design is about inventing things that are not there. So yeah, generative AI can generate things, but can generate things based on what's existing. It's used as an assistant, but it's not used to invent new things, not yet. So, but that will for build. Also, when we build and we use Gen AI a lot when we come to build something. Also, let's take the fiber, continue with the fiber example. When you go into fiber to the sites, we actually have, in the regulations in Germany, there are huge amount of documents, like 900 documents, each like 400 pages. And then every case has a certain law. And then you need to look into which one applies here. I can have eyes, so can I dig? Can I not dig? If I dig, what should I do after or before? Should I wait? These kind of things that the people on the field, the technicians on the field needs to understand. So now they have a chatbot, which we actually trained with our data. Then you can actually ask questions and then get the answer or get the document where the answer is. And then they find it much instead of having this done in half an hour, doing 2 minutes. So there is a big impact on building out the networks and so on. I don't want to give you take a lot of time for that, but we are actually employing predictive and generative AI together in the network for as many use cases as we can. We're also very careful with how to deploy AI in the closed-loop automation, because generative AI is still, the accuracy and the precision of generative AI is not to the limit that networks would actually sustain. So networks would not accept precision that is lower than 95, 100%, except in some exceptional use cases, which, yeah, we can do that. And also, as our colleague here, the productivity is also a very important thing for us in the day-to-day job.
Thank you very much. I actually find it quite reassuring to hear that when it comes to creativity, AI is still not, up there with human intelligence somehow, and it has its limitations, of course.
Still have a job.
Yes. Deborah, I'm very interested in hearing your perspective, because you come from an industry that's slightly different from what we are used to here in MWC. So how do you use AI currently in your sector?
Yeah, thanks. So Assurant is actually a global provider of protection services for mobile and connected devices, right? And so we're much more involved in the end-to-end life cycle for those devices, what happens with them, the consumer interactions. We're B2B2C, so we're supporting our clients, but we're involved with how does the trade-in and upgrade and asset disposition. So when a cell phone has reached the end of its life, how is it broken down into component parts and then recycled? And so there's a lot of kind of sustainability pieces there. But we've, just like you said, we've been leveraging AI for over a decade, right, with the machine learning and robotic process automation and things like that, just to make things much more efficient and run better. But where I would say we're using generative AI and AI in general is in two components. One, unlock business growth, right, and increase efficiency and make things better in that aspect. But second is really to revolutionize the customer experience. So we have found that, there's two components to that point of contact with the customer. There's the employee experience and the tools and resources that they're using to serve the customer. And then there's the customer themselves and how they're interacting with our company and with our clients across a multitude of channels, right? And they're not all digital channels. Sometimes they're phone channels, or sometimes it's face-to-face. And how do you make that experience better, leveraging the generative AI? So we've deployed a lot of different ways and techniques that we're doing that, from chatbots that eliminate the need to talk with somebody, right? Generative AI has completely amplified and just totally, prior to generative AI, I would say chatbots were mediocre at best, right? Pretty much you knew when you were interacting with one, you wanted to hop out. Nobody wants to deal with that. But it's made it so much better, right? That now it can feel like, oh, I might actually get an answer to the question I asked. And even on the agent side, so when a customer is calling the contact center, being able to prompt the agent, so the speech analytics engine is listening to what the customer is saying or typing into the chat, and then the agent is getting an auto response, auto prompted to them. And they can choose to either modify it or use it as is, but over 80% of the time they're choosing to use the generated content. It's that good. Right. And that makes it much faster to respond to customers, and it increased customer satisfaction, 9% lift in our experience. So the other ways we've used it in our contact centers, certainly from a standpoint of being able to auto summarize, use speech analytics to hear what's going on in the call, take the notes for the agent so they don't have to take the notes, they don't have to ask the customer to repeat information, and they can also get coaching nudges real time. And if they're, depending on how they're handling that call, we can say, this is what you should recommend, or here's the answer to the question that the customer is asking. And just when your employees are happier, that can really drive improvements to the customer experience. And same vice versa. When the customers are much happier, then employees don't have to do that heavy lifting and the emotional work of trying to help the customer through the tools. So we're really using it to streamline and improve in various ways throughout the value chain. I would say lastly, in our device care centers, the places where we actually take our cell phones and either examine them for quality or break them down into parts, we built a system that uses neural networks and machine vision to speed up the quality assessment and increase the accuracy, so the devices go through it, and then they're automatically, the robot essentially that we built assesses that and determines what the grade is, what the quality is, and it just makes it much more efficient, make sure that we can operate at the lowest possible cost. And we process about 23 million devices a year through those centers. So it's really sped things up, it's made it easier, and it's certainly contributed to the sustainability aspect.
You have made a very valid point about employee experience? Because I was going to focus this conversation around innovation, around improving operations and customer experience, etc. But we are currently going through this war for talent, aren't we? And it's hard to retain employees and to attract new ones. So the fact that AI can also be used to enhance their experience is a massive plus indeed. Francesc, do you want to give us your perspective at Intel on this first question, the general state of play? Maybe reflect on this step change from AI to Gen AI that you have witnessing.
Well, first, I'd like to start to saying that the use cases that you talked about are very good.
Yes.
Because there is really ROI, right? Because the other thing that is happening is Gen AI is very cool, but people is not aware that making a cat dance, it costs a lot of money and a lot of energy. So I think it's very important that as a society, we understand those trade-offs, because that literally, especially when we talk about sustainability, yeah, those models are very cool, but takes millions of dollars to train, and every cat that you make dance, that implies a lot of energy, right? So I think, I hope that the industry, as we move over the years, we kind of find the right balance of, okay, AI, but looking at other trade-offs like sustainability and impact into the ecosystem, and that also, like with all this craziness of the business hype that we have with AI, that we find the right use cases. And the other thing you guys talked about as well, like it's not only Gen AI, right? So we've been having ML and AI for ages. And in fact, part of my team is going the other way, which we do tiny ML, which is how much you can do with very, very small ML and AI models. Because sometimes, if you are a data scientist, well, you are running this in your organization, you know that AI is not always the right choice, right? So when you look at the work that we are doing from Intel perspective, we're really trying to find the right balance. And that's why not everything is about high-end GPUs, about big systems. It's really find the right solution and the right technology, both from software and hardware. And some examples, and I will talk a little bit more later, that we are doing is trying to optimize energy consumption, and trying to understand when you have deployment models with hundreds of thousands of locations, how you can learn and look for patterns. And to your point, when you have unstructured data, how it makes sense of all this craziness and wildness, and understand, okay, there's a pattern here, so if I do this and that, I'm saving 10% of energy, right? So that's an area where we are deeply focused on. Other things is user experience. I mean, Edge and 5G, 6G, we're always been talking about latency. Maybe not always latency, it's an important factor, depending on the status of the day, the type of applications being used by the end customers, depending on the SLAs. So what we're trying to do is trying to understand the balance between where you place the compute and trying to understand how does the impact in the user experience of the people. And that means that you can use some of those techniques to infer, take those decisions, right? Where I'm going to do my compute, how that's going to impact the end user, right? And obviously, from Intel perspective, we have a lot of focus on the use of AI in many different use cases. You pointed out chatbot. We're looking at manufacturing and other places where we strongly believe that has a lot of potential to save, improve processes, but also provide some value add. So my call would be a little bit that we find this balance, because sometimes hypes are good, but in this case, people, I don't think that there is an awareness on these trade-offs that are behind the Gen AI. So.
Jeppe, give us the HPE perspective on this and your thoughts on what you've heard so far.
The HPE perspective, I'm going to follow Saskia and say I think the use cases you bring are extremely exciting. I think the one use case that we talk to our customers about most often is chat with your data. And I think you brought it up, Ahmed. This is the idea of having this ability to actually not just talk with ChatGPT or another language model, but actually your own data, investigating your own data, like knowledge bases, providing quick answers in customer support. I think that's the number one use case we see at the moment. I think that's the number one that companies and our customers think can bring their fastest return on investment, and also fastest to deploy, right? There's another thing that when listening to you guys, and I mean, it's really, really interesting you're applying it already today, right? And I think the consensus in the industry is that we're only in the beginning, right? We're only in the very, very beginning of what is expected to be like a 10-year journey. Mm-hmm. Imagine what this will be in just 3 or 4 or 5 years out. This is the productivity is going to just go off the charts, right? And we talked a little bit about content creation in the past, and we talked about content creation and all of that stuff that really is generating based on AI. I think that's going to be a massive, massive thing. And then turning to sustainability, it's a very important topic for HP as well. I think you're absolutely right. I think many, many models will be much smaller and much more sustainable in the future. And I certainly hope that we can be a part of that from HP's side as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the audience about what we've heard so far? Observations? No? Yes, Norman at the back.
I think the Intel colleague, the Intel colleague said something about doing as little as possible with certain, machine learning, modules, if you will. Could you just, and because maybe a more complex AI solution isn't always necessary, but could you just kind of give a little example of a task that you have a really crisp approach on?
Yeah, like for example, like some of the use cases that we're doing in the far edge, like video analytics, right? So you can have a model that detects objects and say, okay, I have a person, I have a car, I have a dog, and this is maybe a model that has 7 million of parameters. But what you're really looking for is there's a person or not. And now you can do a binary model that basically goes laser focus on what you're trying to do, right? And then for this, you don't really need to have a very big model. Or other things like sometimes there are some ML models that do clustering to identify different type of persons doing actions within a shop, right? You don't need to use AI for that. So I think that always sometimes, especially I would say new generations, they jump directly into the AI space, but there are tons of techniques that can be used and complementary, right? So, and I think it's very important that when you define your architecture, you make the effort of understanding, do I really need this type of AI, or I can do any other thing that is more cost effective, because that translates in cost of CapEx for the technologies that you need. It translates in OpEx in terms of the energy and management, maintainability and all that stuff. So that's very important. Hopefully that answers that.
No, that's a great example. Thank you.
And to add to that, sometimes it's just data.
Yeah.
So many times you go back to your colleagues and say, that's just data. That's not even AI. Yeah. That's not even where you need to just do your analysis, do your analytics on top of it. And I absolutely agree so much. So when the whole Gen AI thing came on, we went to a whole exercise of workshops. We came back with Stella 90 ideas, of which we said about 40 of these are just data. So we'll give you data, we'll give you accessibility, we'll give you everything. So use that. And then when you start looking at, from a conversation perspective of also, do we actually need to do this?
Yeah.
What is the ROI on this? What's the value of the back of it? And how do you start putting them how do you segregate them into certain buckets? And how do you bring what you absolutely need to do? How much work is the complexity versus data availability, or what value you're going to get? That really came down to 20. Yeah. And then you do your further OPEX, CAPEX calculation of, do you want to be able to invest so much and all of that? That came down to 11 for us. Yeah. So there is a very neat path to be able to say, is it just data? Right. And then that ends a lot of conversations going on there.
100%.
I fully agree with that. Also, to give you also a perspective, that's what we do. We look at three main parameters: cost, precision, and control. So the cost, precision, and control, we start with any rule-based. If rule-based can give you the target you need, and rule-based it is. If then predictive AI can give you, because most of this, for example, in networks, most of the data, or vast majority of the data is structured data. You can use predictive AI, then be it. If then not, and you need another interface like with Gen AI, then we move to Gen AI. But you can throw everything to Gen AI and it will be fine, but to a certain level of precision will be lower. So this is the path we take, and then we decide that. I fully agree with Seth. So actually, this is exactly what we do as well. So,
any more questions from the audience at the back? I like this. A lot of interaction, engagement.
So I kind of always have a reputation for thinking of the customer. So one of the great AI use cases that we're working with Intel on is the ability to ask the network why a very important customer has had bad service, and the amount of effort that the teams have to avoid by doing that. So we go, hey Marvis, why is SIM number XY having a problem in this location? And with the collection of all the data, we're able to really, narrow down very quickly. Actually, turns out, we think there's a new obstacle there, a tree's growing in front of the cell tower. I kind of wonder if the panel could expand on those really focused customer benefit use cases. I think there's a little bit of that, but largely, if we don't see those really customer benefiting use cases and customers want to give us more cash, our ability to maximize the output of AI, we won't be able to afford it. So I really want us to be focused on, hey, how do we make our customers in this beautiful industry we work in get much more out of the network? And I'd love to hear more examples of that.
Who wants to address that question?
I can give a start. So thanks, fantastic question as usual. So the point with networks, that's indeed actually our target. So the vision is that we reach the point of asking these questions, but the idea was that the Gen AI become your interface, but then you have multiple predictive AI and information collected from the network that can give you that in a high precision. The point, what you mentioned, when we look into networks, we're least looking into money or revenues or stuff. We're more really looking to user experience, network efficiency, and time to market. I want us to be very fast. I want to have predictive maintenance. I want to have a very short time to repair, so I repair or avoid even failures. But I also want to have superior customer experience. And of course, I can't tell you more. You know that better. Is that actually end-to-end service experience is a challenge in its own right. That you see where all the chain, we sometimes have chains of 20, 30 different functions contributing to one service. And then in order for you to see the entire chain, how it is reacting, where the problem is, and how to fix it before the problem exacerbates, that's what we're actually focused on in networks. And we're starting with the precision, so with the high precision predictive, but aggregating with the generative AI. That's the vision, so.
And I would probably add, it's not necessarily a networks example, but more in the mobile device world. Two things that we've specifically built. One around fraud flags, right? So there's a high degree of attempted fraud in mobile device and trade-ins and upgrades and things of that nature, and it got lost in the mail, etc. So aggregating and building a predictive model around those fraud flags to reduce the false positives, because you can over-rotate easily, right? And screen out people who are genuinely, so we use the model to say which of these are more likely to result in after the fact. It was a false positive. We flagged it, but they really weren't fraudulent, and so we're reducing those so that more people can get through the claims process in less time, but still making sure we're protecting the bottom line, right? And then the other thing I would say from a predictive standpoint, well, there's one about remote diagnostic on the phones. So today people have to come in and either say, well, what's wrong with it, or I need it assessed, etc. But doing it remotely and letting them get an instant fix, if it can be remotely fixed, or giving them self-service options so that they can, if they have to take it in, they have to, and sometimes that can't be avoided, but if we can make it faster for them. And then the third thing I was going to add is dynamic fulfillment. So essentially, we use the model to be able to propose. So you talked about the thread on the customer data, right? And a lot of times it's just data. It doesn't necessarily need to be a huge complicated model, but by saying where are they located, what kind of phone do they have, what kind of repair is needed, how much is that going to cost, and then giving them pinpoint accuracy, what's the best option for you, and all the while collecting the data we need using data collection bots so that we speed the responsiveness to the customer, right? It used to be, oh, you're going to get a response in 2 days, then it was 24 hours, now it's under 15 minutes. So just shortening the time to fulfill so that they're not waiting around, because all the machine is doing the learning in the background.
And forgive me for my very candid question, but going back to the point that Neil was making, we do understand the use cases, of course, and the time savings, etc. But is it really translating already into tangible results in terms of customer satisfaction?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think as most of the use cases that we've spoken about are clearly around how we service the customer in the end of the day, right? The productivity that we do from an agent perspective, summarization perspective, understanding the faults perspective, or building our chatbots perspective, and everything is centered around how do we get to the customer quite fast? How do we service them fast? What service offerings do we offer them? And how do we get a better service out of it? To answer the question around what are we currently seeing, the bot experience is absolutely bringing a lot of NPS scores out there. And to your point, when we said, the experience that customers have, there's a lot of conversation if you have with the customers where they said, they do not want to talk to the bots because then they do not know if they'd have a right when they talk to a customer service agent, then they would go through a story and they'd get a better discount off the back of it, right? Now, if you build your bot experiences to be able to have that, we're absolutely seeing a higher NPS scores from that. And from network detection perspective as well, there is a lot of defects that we are able to bring back and to be able to say do a better service back to our customer as well. So there's a lot of productivity gains, customer engagement gains, customer retention gains that we're already seeing from that perspective.
Yeah, and I would say definitely in customer satisfaction, NPS. The other thing I would add in there is customer effort, right? And customer effort score, because people want a digital way to do things. They want their interactions to be quick and easy. And I always say experience management is expectation management, right? If I expect it to be cumbersome, people know dual factor authentication, right? That's the price of doing business now. At first, it was a shock to the system, but now everybody expects that. Like, that's how you're keeping your data private. So if they expect it to be cumbersome and it's a little bit cumbersome, that's fine. If they expect it to be easy and it's easy, great. It's when they expect it to be easy and it's actually challenging that then the scores go off the rails, right? And so customer effort score is a really good way to identify, have I made this easy for my customers to get through? How much friction is embedded in the process? Because if it's hard for them to transact business with you, then that's going to reduce that brand and reputation impact.
Jeppe, you want to do follow-up?
Yeah, I think that's amazing use cases. So you can actually improve your customer retention, right? The question I have is it actually a competitive advantage? Can you use it as a competitive advantage in the future as well? And do you sort of calculate that when you build your use cases?
I mean, the benchmark's gonna go up. The customer's gonna expect this. In a few years, do you think customers would not want to do it digitally? Did they not want to Google quite soon, right? So first of all, from a perspective of the customer, the expectation will absolutely go up. The customers will want this. They want the ease of use. They want to be able to know they get the service. It's going to get to be a standard practice quite soon. So companies who not invest in it, understand the data, get the data accessibility, and think about their customer, build these use cases now, will not be able to stand the test of time to be able to get there, right? So that's something that is a given. And then as we start getting more data in there, as we start building models sustainably, but we start adding a predictive and generative understanding of a customer, more innovation will come out of it as we start moving forward. So this is a revolution. As my boss says, Mehta, you cannot bottle it up.
Yeah.
This is going to happen. This is out there. We are just catching up to be able to see that we service our customers well. We understand the right sustainable models that we need to be able to build. What are the use cases we need to invest in? And how do we get to that path in a certain way? So it's here to stay. It's already started. I think we are catching up already. But customers' expectation will go up.
I think sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's incredibly well stated. The thing I would add on to that is going back to is a competitive edge. The companies that are going to gain a competitive edge on this are the ones who identify which are the experiences where it matters to truly invest, right? You talked about where not all experiences are created equal. We don't need to surprise and delight on every single thing we do, right? Sometimes it's just get the business done and get out of there. And that still takes an investment, but picking the ones that are going to have the most impact, that's where you get that competitive edge. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, real quick. I'm usually talking on the side of the architect, and now I'm going to give my perspective as a customer. Last week, I discovered a tool that we have within Intel that basically you record all your meetings you get the transcript, you upload it in a ChatGPT type of tool, and then you get all the minutes.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I'm not doing minutes anymore. You know, and it's like, there's no way back for me to go to my taking minutes, and you know, and I think that these are things that when you get used to it, and it's like, no way, I'm coming back. So
it's going to be a bad employee experience if they don't have it. And then they would actually start judging companies for not providing it. And to your point, we should not boil the ocean. We should build core models that are core to the company, that is going to actually build the company up. Use embedded services that are already someone who's an expertise somewhere else, and you can just bring them in, bring the productivity, and build your core models, and that's how you stay competent.
Yep. Right. Francesc, as a journalist, this really resonates. This resonates with me, I can tell you. I mean, the amount of time it used to take in the olden days to transcribe a conversation and maybe translate it as well, and yes, get the minutes, but it does have to be checked, I must say.
Oh, that's for sure. I spent like 10 minutes just going through the minutes, but yeah.
Yes. Do we have any more questions from the room? Over there, please.
Thanks. I think it was the gentleman on the right. He made a comment that we're at an early stages of AI, and I think the time frame you gave was maybe 10 years. Was that your comment?
That's my claim, but I'm sure others can chime in.
So I'm curious on, I guess, after 10 years, where do you think AI would be? Can you give certain examples? And would that be like the end of the, I guess, the revolution? I mean, I'm just curious on the 10-year time frame.
End of time.
That's a very good question and a completely impossible question to answer. I have literally no idea. When you think of, it's less than 15 months since ChatGPT launched.
Yeah.
And I think it's just going to accelerate. And I think everybody sort of agrees that it's going to accelerate. If you look at I don't want to mention competitors, but if you look at the stock market right now, there's some of those AI companies out there that are just going through the roof right now. There's more than one, but there's one in particular that's going through the absolute ceiling, right? So I think, in general, I think we are embarking on a journey that, and I have no idea where we'll be in 10 years. I think I made that comment before as well. But I think we're gonna. When you listen to some of the people from OpenAI, when you listen to Sam Altman and that crew, and I think they state that they're in this for the greater good of the human being, right? Increasing the welfare of every human being. I really hope that that's something that we can all deliver on and achieve. And if we can keep increasing productivity, like we talk about here today, then certainly that's a noble goal. But I don't want to venture any guesses. You're going to come back in 2 years and say I was completely wrong.
I mean, there was a keynote yesterday, if anyone saw it, from one of the big keynotes down there on main stage, Earth as a Service, from an AI perspective. That really blew my mind. Earth as a service to each, person out here, and it was something else. And again, we never know. We didn't know that machines were going to learn our language 10 years ago. So we don't know how it's going to innovate itself into. So there's a lot to look forward to as a technologist.
Yep.
On the more general note, the expressions you have been using remind me of the discourse that was happening during the 90s when the internet appeared. And it was going to be a tool for empowerment.
You got in trouble.
Decentralization, etc. So isn't there a danger with this AI or Gen AI conversation that we are fairly utopian when it comes to all the benefits and who is going to benefit?
Yeah, you're looking at me. Go ahead first. I walked into it, I think. Yes, there is. 100% there is. But I do think that it's... I gave a speech about 4 months ago. It was called 5 Years Out. It was impossible. It was much like the question from the gentleman.
Not 10 years, 5 years.
Not 10 years, but 5 years out. And I said it's completely impossible. But I did make the statement that generative AI is like, it's the iPhone moment, or it's the internet moment, or it's the killer application, right? So we talk about the killer app. What's the killer application? And I think ChatGPT was that killer app that transforms industries. And I think that's what's happening. I think that's what we're on the cusp of. And venturing into what does that mean? Well, go back, and this is the industry that nurtured the iPhone, right? Think of how much that mobile device has changed your life. So I think I'm not going to make a guess or a statement, but I do really generally think that this is one of those moments where we're going to look back and say, yeah, I remember where I was when ChatGPT launched.
And maybe just a comment on the healthcare and all that stuff. Like last week, I was in a face-to-face with one of the top team that is doing cancer research here in Spain, and basically they were saying that they have started like changing their mindset on how they use technology, because like they are seeing that the way they operate and the way that they treat data, the way they try to, kind of look at the patient it's completely changing with this new AI technologies. And they were telling me like that now they even have rooms like you own there, and they do like pictures like all over your body, and they detect things like 10 times faster than previously, right? So I think in general, like it can, hopefully that's gonna it will be used in a way that some of these things that were challenged up to now, that we can not only kind of think in traditional things, image detection and stuff, but maybe even automatic drug I don't know. There are some use cases that they may be coming, right? And we have the technology.
Yeah. Okay. So let me add. Like anything, AI is a double-edged sword. It has its dark side, and we already see it being used. So that it's being used to generate codes that would actually hack others, or launch attacks, or launch denial service attacks. So that's happening. There's also the element of being ethically aware, even not only regulated, but also ethically aware of AI is extremely important at this point of time. You could also fast forward and think anything you can think. And I mean, the question you posed on 10 years actually got me a little bit of a headache when I tried to actually think about it, because it's worrying. But I'm not seeing AI as the inception of the iPhone. I'm actually, the analogy in my mind is when the computers were invented in the hands of consumers. It's a moment of our generation, I would imagine 70s, 80s. We have seen a lot of change. We have seen with nothing, with no phones, to only dial-ups. We have seen all the change. I mean, I don't think there is any generation that have seen all these transformations. And I think AI is a bigger transformation than all what we have seen so far. And the problem with it is that there is a barrier. Once you get over that barrier with the processor, with the compute capabilities, with getting it consumer-wise, so it's kind of democratized, then we will see a different world. This world with all its good and bad sides. And to me, everybody's working, get AI working, but there's a little effort, not enough effort, to make sure that this is in the right direction. We have to admit that we're not spending that effort. Everybody's trying here and there, to be fair to everyone, but are we doing it enough? I don't think so. I think we need to do a lot more into that element.
But that happens with every tech disruption, right? The bad things and the good things boom because people want to stretch their imagination. They want to be able to try things. Again, as you said, the guardrails are really important. As we go through the change management process, as we go through the adoption process, as we understand how much we could do and what we need to do for it, security and everything that we need to build into it, it's absolutely important that the guardrails are set, even for companies. When we are doing the use cases, when we are going to the customers, we need to be able to understand, is our governance in place? Data governance and AI governance in place? As you said, the ethics are in place. Are we thinking about it? Are we thinking about a risk management? What are the corner cases we're thinking about? All of that needs to be set with intention if we're going to get anywhere, but it's here. So the best things we can do is to be able to adopt it, to be able to use it for the good. There's greater good that it could be used for.
Now, these sounds like closing remarks, but I have more questions for you. Okay, a couple more. And going back maybe to the issue of sustainability, we're going to need huge compute power to make all this work, right? So how do we go about it, maybe to our HPE and Intel experts? How do we go about it in a sustainable fashion?
Well, I think that we are working together in many different projects, but I think that at the end of the day is really, you have to do like what we call proportional computing, which basically like make sure that you use energy in the proportional way. The respect of, for example, when you have a problem that is about doing defect detection in a manufacturing facility, right? So like what you need to make sure is that the compute capabilities that you put in there, the energy, is really like proportional to the job that you have to do. Like, for example, I need to process 10 frames per second to identify like if there's a defect on a particular welding machine that is doing, right? And the other thing that's like in terms of the energy is like aspects that we're working on together is like cooling technologies, built-in accelerators. So there's a lot of these problems that can be accelerated with a specific ASICs or with a specific instructions. So I think that we are going through this process of really understanding as we go through this transformation in terms of the AI workload, how they require compute requirements, memory requirements, I/O requirements, so the resources that they need, how we can accelerate some of those things. Because if you look like CPU or GPU architecture for the last few months with all this ChatGPT, like we even kind of start like thinking, okay, we have to redesign what we've been doing up to now, because like these models are completely different from what we've been using up to now. And I think that in this area where you look at the compute, but more important at the system level, connecting memory, connecting like storage, GPUs, we have to work together to make sure that the final solution is optimal, right? And when you do the racks, the same thing. And more important, when you run on top the software stacks that our developers are using to develop the framework, the applications and the use cases, we need to work together to look holistically, right? And I think this is one of the most important challenges that we have ahead, is really understand the end solution, the end application, to make sure that the technologies that we put underneath are efficient, right? In terms of cost, in terms of energy, sustainability, and to the point that they talk about the security, like that you have the data privacy, that you provide ways to secure the model. So there are lots of things that are happening that we need to provide as technologies, right, to enable this AI that is coming.
Quick comment from my side. I think we want to increase the visibility of the power consumptions and the carbon footprints that's used. So I think there's already a trend in the industry where there's on Hugging Face, they will show how much carbon was actually used to train a given model. I think that's a very, very good way to go. And at HPE, we've got projects where we're building sustainability dashboards, really trying to show cradle to grave how much carbon was consumed running a given workload. And I think that kind of visibility is needed also in the future. It's not just the actual cost. We should also be concerned about the power and thereby the carbon that we burn, basically, to run these AI models.
And maybe let me add one more thing. I think also, like when we look at AI, we always think at the data center. But many of the use cases that we have are highly distributed. And just to give an example, like we're doing something that is called elastic energy, which is, okay, energy is not something that is in a particular location. It's something that spans across all these deployments. And we've been doing like some engagement with, for example, one customer that they have 50,000 edge locations. And by looking at the energy globally and moving workloads from one place to another, like in 1 year, we were able, like, we're in the deployment phase, but with earlier analysis and modeling, we potentially could save like $70 million US of energy per year and 250,000 millions of CO2, of kilograms of CO2 emissions a year. And that's because the problem when you go in highly distributed systems, and I'm sure that the BT guys are doing this every single day, like looking, okay, how I optimize energy at that scale, because when you have like all these models distributed across, this is a very complex problem. You don't have like a 40 megawatt center. No, you have 40 megawatts, but highly distributed. And I think that's a big challenge that we are trying to solve together as an ecosystem.
Now the clock is ticking, unfortunately, and we don't want to deprive the room of the opportunity to ask more questions to our panelists before we wrap up. That's it. Okay. So to finish this conversation, I'd like to hear your final thoughts on the topic we were trying to address. Well, I think we've done pretty well actually addressing the topic today around how we can use AI to transform various aspects of telco operations. So maybe to finish with, maybe you could tell us maybe the key areas where you see huge potential to just do that.
Well, actually, I don't think we've discovered the key areas. I think we will be extremely innovative moving forward. I don't think we can even imagine today what's going to be the biggest benefits and the biggest achievements we're going to make in the future. So I think we all have an extremely exciting future ahead, and I think AI will be the driving force for many interesting projects. And I think in a few years' time, we'll look back and say, wow, we achieved that as well.
Thank you.
Well, I think what I started at the beginning, I think that we have to find the right place for AI and make this effort of really understanding where we use it and keep in mind the sustainability aspect, right? Because the energy, and I mean, here in Spain now we're going with a very rough time in terms of energy, water, and stuff like that. So, I mean, my call would be, okay, AI is very important, it's very good, but let's focus in the right places.
Let's focus on humans.
Let's focus on
to start with.
Humans.
Deborah.
For sure, yeah. I mean, like I said, I would focus on three key aspects: the employees, the customers, and the ecosystem itself, right? So talking about sustainability, I mean, that's a core aspect of what we do in terms of sustainability for throughout the device life cycle. You know, once a cell phone has reached the end of its usable life, how is it broken down into components and entering the circular economy so that it can be reused and not even 1 millimeter of wire goes to waste, right? And using data, using the power of data and saying, you know, what's our carbon IQ, looking at our various telco partners and saying, helping them assess using the data, what is your carbon footprint? From the employee side, making things so much better and easier for them to do the work. We're all in the business of business. And so employees are going to have roles to do, and how are we leveraging the power of AI to make that easier, and ultimately making things easier for customers to interact with all of us, making it easier and giving them more time back in their day to go about their business and, you know, use their wireless devices, use their communication tools in a really easy and seamless way. So yeah, I think the ethics and corporate governance and strong controls, we're going to make mistakes. Make no mistake about it, right? There are things are going to happen, but it's how are we going to recover? How are we going to, you know, learn from those things that go out of control and say, okay, that's a new guardrail that we need to put into place to protect ourselves and the world.
Thank you, Deborah. Ahmed.
Right, I'll take your question and scope it only on networks and tell you our priority. In Deutsche Telekom, we regard that the top 3 areas that would have the potential are the operational area, because there's a lot to do in order to make the network run much more efficiently. The second is planning, because every process comes on the back end of planning. So if you plan well, everything else comes well, and security. So these are the 3 areas we believe that has the highest potential of reaping significant value in networks.
Thank you. Deepika?
I mean, I'm incredibly excited. I can't stop myself. But as we said, we need to be able to sustainably think about it, with governance think about it, have our guardrails in place, bring out use cases which are very relevant for the customer, and also then absolutely understand what we built the core of the business. How do we enhance the core of the business from where we come from, and how do we bring and use our partners more? So that's the strategic approach we are taking. As I said, it's around getting things done for us, sales and service. How do we get that back? Take care of our colleagues, service our customers well, and to be able to sell through digital channels and make it quite automated so we don't have to do a lot.
Thank you very much. I think the key word here really is energy. I think one of the key benefits of what's happening at the moment is how it's really helping to re-energize the industry, and not just the telco industry, but all industries. There's a lot of excitement going on at the moment, and it's very nice to see. Thank you very much. To all my lovely panelists.
Thank you.
And to you, the audience, for your questions. Thank you.
Thanks.